Hello, friends. It's Binge O'Clock, the podcast where we watch something and then we talk about it. I'm Joy Selden, and I've seen almost everything.
I'm Danielle, and I've seen almost nothing.
And we made it. We are at our Almost Human wrap-up episode.
Woohoo!
Our episode 14, as it were.
Season 1 wrap-up episode.
So, in this episode, we're just going to be talking about a few things that we saw in Almost Human, what we liked, what we didn't like, some things, some plot holes that will never get filled.
It's not just us griping about the season, we promise.
Not all of it.
Not all of it. Just a little bit of
But
it.
yeah, why don't we start with your favorite episodes of Almost Human and why? Would you like me to go first, Danielle?
I mean, you can because, well, okay, let me start by saying that when we were discussing this wrap-up episode, Joy originally wanted us to do a ranked top 5, which I said a hard no to. I said, why don't we do a top 3? I think maybe I can get a top 3.
Well, then I agreed to, because 5 episodes of Almost Human is half the series. So
And
it made sense.
And so I asked for the assignment to be reduced to top 3, and I couldn't even do that. I don't even have a top 3. I have a top 2. And they're not even ranked. They are just my 2 favorite episodes. So I think this is where we reveal that sometimes I'm a bad student.
I love that you still managed to put it into teacher terms.
Okay, so
I couldn't even do this assignment.
couldn't even do it. Well, my top 2 episodes were for sure Arrhythmia and Skin. And I couldn't decide which one I liked better, but those are my favorite 2.
Yes, and those are actually included in my top 3. My top 3, I think from 3 to 1, I had Skin, Unbound, and Arrhythmia. Arrhythmia was definitely my top favorite episode.
Nice.
It gives you so many complicated things, and it really tells you a lot about the world, and you get a lot of Dorian sympathy, which I really appreciated.
I loved Arrhythmia. I mean, I think that I liked all of the same show elements you just mentioned. I think they're great character moments. The mystery is so good.
The mystery is really solid, yeah.
The mystery is super solid, and I liked the reveal at the end. Like, it didn't feel... It was a little Scooby-Doo. But
I was going to say, didn't we harp on it for being a little bit Scooby-Doo,
But it was fun.
Look, Scooby-Doo can be fun.
Scooby-Doo can be fun, and it wasn't as ridiculously Scooby-Doo as I think the episode with the Chromes where it was the mom. Like, in that episode, that episode felt like the writers had designed the episode to make it 40 minutes long. You know, because I feel like the police would have spoken to that woman earlier than they did. But the writers made them speak to her later because it's a 40-minute episode. In Arrhythmia, I think like the steps came together and made sense.
Yeah. Or they would have talked to other people before that. Like, why are you not talking to the families of the people who have lost children now? And you're talking to the mother of a dead child from last year or something, or whatever it was. Like, it didn't connect in a way that made for good police work. Weirdly.
Yeah, exactly. And in Arrhythmia, the twists and turns of the show were really fun. And then the other 50% of the reason I liked Arrhythmia was Henry. Henry
Mills was as we said in our podcast episode, was an amazingly complicated villain. And I would have been excited to see him in future episodes. Like, I think he would have made a really good either recurring villain or like somebody you may or may not rely on for later things. Like he could have come back in as in other roles.
Like as a consultant. So you go and see him when you say, hey, so this nefarious thing is going on in the city. Do you have any connections to that?
Right? Like, he seemed like a person with, you know, like his ear to the grindstone kind of thing. And I think he would have had some intel or had some understanding of, like, what was happening around town. And I would have loved to have seen him again.
100% agreed. I really liked Henry Mills.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
and then, of course, the other great part about Arrhythmia is DRN 494.
I know.
that was really, like, it was such a great Dorian episode.
It's a really good Dorian episode. And we got to see a lot of growth from Dorian, and we also got to understand that he understands how different the DRN series was and how each one of them was different. And you don't need to be a cop to be a useful part of society for the DRN series. And I do wonder if the DRNs had been given a choice of, if you are malfunctioning because of the things you're seeing as a cop, because that 400% is so high, maybe you need a different job. What if you had a different job? What if the DRNs were still useful in other facets of society?
Yeah.
And, you know, still with the human connection and still with all of those pieces in place. But, you know, it is a little sad to see this other DRN basically just be a maintenance bot. Yeah. And, like, he doesn't need to have a personality.
Right. But he has one.
But he has one.
And he likes his job.
He likes his job. And he's good at it. He's very happy. I did put Unbound on there because I really wanted to have Nigel Vaughn in there. Unbound is up there because I think Nigel Vaughn is also probably my second. I feel like Henry Mills and Nigel Vaughn like vie for first place villain in my head. When I was doing my rewatch, that episode was the one that I ended up watching the most of as I was watching through it, to just remind myself of how the ins and outs of that were fairly tricky. And I even went back and watched it again and realized, like, he's under a false name. So he's thinking he doesn't even have to talk about Danica very specifically, right? Like, no one would recognize him except Dorian. Dorian recognizes him. And that, like, changes his entire MO for the entire rest of the episode. And I was just like, oh, you're so complicated. And oh, boy.
Yeah.
If you had returned to the show, it would have been amazing. But that's okay. We only got one season. We can only ask for so much.
So Arrhythmia is your number 1.
Yes.
And Unbound came in at number 2. What was it that pushed Arrhythmia higher? Was it the DRN 494? Or was there anything specific?
I think what pushed Arrhythmia higher, I think it's like what you said. The episode itself was so tight, and all the pieces, like all the building blocks fell into place. You and I weren't really picking apart the plot that much because the plot made sense in the course of the show. The black market made sense. The reason you need these hearts and the reason they need the little trekkers on them made sense. The villain made sense. And even the other people in his, you know, quote unquote organization made sense, because it's like, no, you're not going to tell everybody the whole story. You're going to give them as much information as they need.
Yeah.
Like all of it, like I didn't need to poke holes in it.
What does it say about this show that we love?
Yes.
What does it say about this show that we love that our favorite episode is the one that made sense?
I mean, look, this show is very good at its action and its high intensity, hyperdrive action sequences and sort of out there, a little bit shock and awe, really. And I think the reason Arrhythmia is such a cut above the rest of it is because it still had that high impact without too many of the explosions and, except for that one drone flying into the DMX.
Maybe without relying on those moments to keep it interesting.
Yes.
Like the story was interesting. It wasn't the explosions that were interesting.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
The story held its own. And I think that's what makes for a really good episode of a TV show. And all the other episodes are great on their own as well. But Arrhythmia was the one that was succinct throughout.
One thing that Almost Human has really going for it is the chemistry of its cast.
Yes. Yes.
And not even just Michael Ealy and Carl Urban. Not just Michael Ealy and Carl Urban. Really like the group, the crew.
What eventually becomes the ensemble cast of the show. Definitely meshes well together. But I think you could probably take arrhythmia out of context of the entire show and show it to someone, and they would get a good feel for what this show is.
Mm-hmm.
The pilot is a little bit all over the place. You know what I mean? Like, sure, you could show the pilot to somebody, but wow. But like arrhythmia, you could probably you could show them it gives you the tidbits of how the DRNs aren't on the force anymore, and it also gives you a little bit of backstory for Dorian, a little bit of backstory for Kenix, and how we got to where we are.
Yeah,
and you have some Maldonado in there. I think
a
little bit.
But there's enough.
I mean, personally, I'm just there could always be more Maldonado and Rudy, but it's fine.
Exactly. All right, now let's talk about your number 3, Skin.
Yes. What Skin is able to do is, and I do think, as we'll talk about later, I went through and watched, did a speed watch through of these series in the order in which it was supposed to be shown. I think the reason I like Skin is because it was their episode 2, and because Skin is the first time that you feel, not that you feel sympathy for Dorian, but that you are shown why Dorian might be sympathetic to these sex bots and might understand what's happening to them on a real genuine level, even though Skin was supposed to be episode number 5.
Yeah.
And because you get that so quickly after that pilot, the action is still there for sure. There's a lot of action in Skin, but that where the pilot anchored you to Kenix, Skin anchors you to Dorian. And I think you really understand why Dorian is the way he is and how sympathetic he actually is to other robots who are like him.
I loved Dorian in Skin too. I added Skin for sure because of that, because I love the sex bots and I can't not love the sex bots.
I know.
And I also really liked the tech in Skin.
Yes. I mean, it gave us Flash Mask.
It gave DNA bomb, absorption
DNA bomb.
Tag scrambler. It was just bam, 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 bam. Here's that 400% that we were talking about. I loved that. And I think that it also, similar to Arrhythmia, it did a nice job of taking one piece of tech, kind of in a Black Mirror-esque way, I suppose. But let's narrow in on this one piece of tech and how that technology would change the world, right? Mm-hmm. So let's take these robotic hearts. What would happen with robotic hearts in this world? Now let's take these sex bots. What would happen to the sex industry in this world? And I liked that about both episodes.
Well, as we saw as we did the podcast of the this piece of tech. Oh, don't let this world get its hands on this piece of tech. Yeah. Oh boy. Please don't.
No.
I'm also sitting here just after having watched the entire series and you having watched it for the first time and the last episode being about these bioscanners, all I can think about is all you would have had to do would have been a bioscan a human being's skin and put it on your sex bots, and that's it?
I guess, but...
Because then it's not human skin? It's not a living person skin. I don't know. I have questions.
Yeah, I was going to say, according to Rudy, you can tell the difference. And I'm sure Detective Paul would tell you the same thing. They would all be flat-footed, though, so...
They would all be flat-footed!
All right. So now that we've done top 3, we thought it'd also be fun to discuss our favorite side characters, because as much as we love the main cast and crew, Almost Human has some excellent side characters.
I just realized all of our favorite side characters are women.
Yeah, because if I had to ding this show for anything, it's for really not fleshing out Valerie in any way, shape, or form. How did they take the most intelligent person on their team and just make her the love interest? There's so much potential with her backstory. I will never not be mad about that, but it's fine.
I think what it is it's that Deanna Troi problem.
Yeah.
Of just she's a very sympathetic character and also super smart. And then as soon as you make her a love interest or you make her like even vaguely interested in another character, all of a sudden we are no longer interested in her intellect, and we like start losing pieces, and I'm just like, but that's what I like.
No. Okay,
I like
favorite
her
side
because she's
characters.
smart. It's fine.
Should we take turns?
Yes. Favorite side characters. You go first.
Well, it won't be taking turns if I go first.
Oh, that's true.
You've
No. Well, we'll take turns. Well, okay. Do you want to start with McGinnis, since we only really saw McGinnis in one episode?
I know, and I basically already talked about her. McGinnis is my favorite side character. I know that you love Rudy to bits. If we reduced Rudy by 50% and subbed in McGinnis, like I wanted McGinnis all over this show, because I think, and I think it actually would have made more sense, because the show pulls Rudy in a lot of different directions and they don't let us understand what he's actually good at. It's just like every time there's a thing that has maybe something to do with tech, it's Rudy. And but also he does the autopsies. Also he does, you know what I mean? Also he's a hacker. Like if he were only the tech expert, that makes sense. But if he's also your coroner and also your hacker, it doesn't.
And your amateur chemist?
And your amateur chemist, who is though the best chemist you know. I see. I forgot about that. That's a really good point. See?
That's a plot point for one of the episodes, is that he also understands chemistry. Like, yes, I agree with you. I think there should have been more McGinnis.
And McGinnis could have been the chemistry person, or McGinnis could have been I mean, pick any one of those four things. She could have been the one who does the well, I don't know. She feels like a person who would do actual autopsies.
She feels like a Hooper to me. Like she feels like a Hooper from Sherlock, where it's just like you work in the morgue.
Yep.
And you have a very dry sense of humor.
Or maybe she would get to come to crime scenes. She's their CSI. That'd be fun.
Right?
I would love a CSI on scene. She probably would have told Kennex not to just cut that body open in the last episode. Ungloved,
oh my God, right?
By the way.
Oh my God. like before anyone would have come to like swab for anything, like he just starts moving around the evidence like a weirdo. Like, what are you doing? Why you need to go back to cop school? I do agree with you. I think having McGinnis would have made Rudy make more sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Rudy is great where he lives in the hacker tech, world of what he does. Mm-hmm. I don't think he necessarily needed to cover as many bases as the show made him cover. That said, I have seen this character sort of come and go in some of these shows. Like this happened in the X-Files every now and then. Like Mulder would have some person in where even is she? She's in like evidence something.
I don't know.
I don't remember.
Are you under the impression that I've seen the X-Files? Because that's incorrect.
If only we could watch the X-Files. The X-Files is too long. Maybe we'll watch the movie for reasons.
I do like that you just looked at me like, where was she again? I was like, I don't know.
Where was she again? No. But like McGinnis is in evidence.
Oh. Well, she's in forensics.
Yeah, she's in forensics.
She's their CSI person.
Mulder would have like a friend in forensics where he's like, you take care of this for me. Lunch is on me tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And then it would be like a little wink and a nudge and you would never see this person again. Like, and I don't know if that was they were like testing things out or if they just needed an extra person to make a plot line make sense, because that's what McGinnis essentially does.
Yeah.
He gives in this thing and then.
But that conversation that she had with Kennex, like, what if we had conversations like that every episode? That would have been so much fun. I'm here for Kennex having another healthy relationship in his life also. It would be the other positive to McGinnis showing up and being consistent. It's just another positive relationship for Kennex.
I just really like that they're a good volley for each other. Mm-hmm. That's what I liked about them, because they seem to have a relationship that it was just like, you can't keep coming down here, Kennex. I have other work to do, and it really worked. I like McGinnis. Mm-hmm. I have two. This is like your one more thing. I have two. Mine are, it's a tie between Maya and Paige. Because for somewhat different reasons. Like, I really liked how Paige was very calm, cool, and collected under pressure and was able to really be like the real MVP of that episode and like take care of getting a cell phone out there so that the cops could still listen in and like also take care of her sister.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Maya does similar things in her episode where she, you know, she's able to think forward a little bit more than probably anyone in that situation. But, you know, she's really able to kind of take charge of her own destiny in that way. And even though she does get hurt, and even though she's just such a ray of sunshine, she's so cute.
She's lovely.
Maya's just precious.
Mm-hmm. They could have brought her on for more cases too, don't you think?
Right? I would put her on retainer for sure.
Right? Like, what if she shows up and she holds literally any victim's article of clothing, and then she goes, yes, so who killed you? Cool. Bye. Like, instant
She's standing right behind you. No, yeah, it 100%. Like, I'm always here for like adding psychics to the police force.
Mm-hmm.
I will watch that till the cows come home. But yes, and then you and I talked about which tech we wish existed in 2021. Mine is a bit of a cop-out because all I could think of was like better coroners.
Better coroners.
Do your job.
Notice things. Make connections.
Make connections. It was very frustrating. Although probably my other one, which is slightly more serious, would probably be like Dorian. But I think 20 and 2021 would have definitely broken the DRN series. Mm-hmm. So there's that.
So a couple pieces of tech I wish existed in 2021, the year that this podcast is being made.
We're dating ourselves. It's fine. It's fine.
We are. It's true. This was actually really hard, and so it's a short list because as established, there are so many things that sound lovely in theory, like robotic hearts, that when you actually put them in the hands of people and you actually put them in the hands of a government that doesn't care about people's needs or wants, or certain people's needs or wants, then everything turns terrible. Like the automated supplement dispensaries. That sounds like a great idea. Every single shelter has a machine that gives people the vitamins and nutrients they need. But I know 2021 would have found a way to mess that up for us.
Yeah. And just like some shortage would have happened.
There'd be a shortage. The pinpricks would have infected people with something. The vitamins and nutrients inside of the pills would actually be placebos, or couldn't be absorbed in the right way, or things would start like just
testing. They would have tested on the unhoused, and I don't like it.
That's what I mean. The pinpricks, they have people's blood. Like it would have gone wrong. I know it would have gone wrong. So I settled on VR parties and a full immersion golf course. What if we had better ways to escape from reality? I'll take those.
I would also, yes, the full immersion golf course. I liked it when I saw it. I still like it. I love that idea. I would definitely like it would be sold in a pack with like 4 other sports.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, and I would be down for like, maybe there's a tennis, but they're like, your room must be at least 20 feet wide to play tennis. Otherwise, we're not responsible for anything that happens in your home. You know, it'll be like that little PlayStation disclaimer that it's like, please be sure to play responsibly.
True. And then the VR parties. If I could feel like a party while not having, like, if I could feel like I'm at a party without having to go anywhere, that would be fabulous.
That's the introvert in you talking.
That is the introvert in me talking. But I want it.
100%. You mean I don't have to go anywhere, but I could still see my friends? Done.
Yes. And feel like we're at a party. And feel the music and the drinks and the dancing. Like all of that. Like I acknowledge that we can all meet over Zoom and talk. I acknowledge that we can all play The Sims and have the Sims gather in a room and throw a quote party. But I want to feel like I'm at the party. And then be able to just take off the goggles when I'm done.
Yes. No, that actually sounds pretty rad. I would also want to do that for sure. But yeah, so I sped through, and I'm just going to list them real quick because you've got the Google.
Did you literally speed through? Like, was it on 2 times speed?
Okay, so what I ended up doing was, because I watch it on Amazon Prime, so I made sure I had the window open and I was able to hit like the right arrow, which would speed through at about 10 seconds per click.
Oh.
So I tended to do that. But I mean, I also suggested to Danielle that I was like, you could do this with me if you want. And then I was like, actually, don't worry about it, because I realize I've seen this before and you haven't. And so I think this would be more difficult.
Oh, yeah.
For you.
I don't think I'd be capable of understanding anything over again if it was playing at 10 times speed.
Right? Well, and it was so much easier for me to just like skip through because like you've only seen each episode
Twice.
2, maybe 3 times.
No, not 3.
Right? Twice, yeah. Like once to just watch it and once to take notes. And like I was looking for sort of overarching things, nothing too drastic. But pretty much what happened is pretty much what you expect to happen. If you watch this in order, the relationships between characters and the character growth made a lot more sense.
Wait, you mean the writers thought about actual character development and logical progressions?
Weird, right? It's I will say this, there is this turning point in because again, what I mentioned in Skin is like you get this instant sympathy for Dorian when that is episode 2. The interesting thing that happens is because you don't get Skin until episode 5, but you get Arrhythmia at episode 3. But it takes 3 episodes for you to get a real like a genuine sympathetic feel for Dorian. And that happens in Arrhythmia when he sees another DRN that's like himself. So having that happen like a full, like after the pilot, after You Are Here, which is supposed to be episode 2, where he speaks Korean for half the episode.
Yeah.
Then you get Arrhythmia. And what was interesting to me is, well, first of all, the normal escalation of Maldonado, because now Kennex has destroyed 3 MXs, 1 per episode, 2 of which he was personally responsible for. But the Dorian comes off reckless in Arrhythmia. Right? Like, even though he's like, Kennex never follows the rules, Dorian is the one who takes a DRN on a ride along. He's the one who like starts the car and like, you know, gives it a few jolts.
You know, that actually does make sense though. Because it's funny that in the pilot they wake up Dorian and they give us so many warnings about him. Oh, this is why they were decommissioned. He's going to be wildly unstable. He's not fit for the job. And then you just get a very good police officer.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I know.
Like, he actually, it makes sense.
Well.
It makes sense that he starts out quote, unreasonable, you know, and a little bit more impulsive. That's what they sold us. That's what they sold him as.
Yeah, he definitely comes off as weirdly reckless, even though he's the one harping on the rules that Kennex isn't following. He just suddenly decides to bring a DRN along for the ride and, like, gives the DRN his old records without updating them. You know what I mean? Like, he does this weird, like, impulsive thing.
Well, he's making decisions based on his heart, not his head.
Exactly.
Which is what a DRN is. Well, that's what they told me a DRN would do.
Right. And I do think it's interesting because we've had a couple episodes where we get very forward Kennex, and then we get a Dorian-specific episode.
Yeah.
So we actually, quote-unquote, know more about Kennex and how he operates, and then Dorian just kind of comes out swinging, no pun intended. But, like, and then it gets into, like, perception and into... Actually, between Arrhythmia and perception... The weird thing is I feel like Dorian was trying to push this friendship or this level of relationship onto Kennex. That was actually the impression I was getting. Because in Arrhythmia, he has that really, like, very honest, you were the one who woke me up, and I didn't know if I was ever going to wake up again. You know, and I just wanted to be that for I wanted to be that for this guy. You know, like, this is very important to me. And it's weird because it feels not false, but you know, like when something is very important to one person and the other person just isn't there, like doesn't realize it, is like, and it puts this weird almost pressure on their relationship. Mm-hmm. And it comes across as very tense because you don't have the Skin moment. Like, you don't have their relationship in Skin where they're kind of like bantering back and forth. You haven't seen that yet. So you're just like, well, this kind of came out of nowhere.
I guess so. Though, as written, I think that also makes sense because what Dorian is saying there is, it's funny because if we watch it the way it was aired, that comes across as a very heartfelt friendship moment. But if you watch it as written, then you take it at face value. The reason that he likes Kennex is because Kennex is the person who woke him up. That's true. And Kennex could have been literally anyone. Doesn't really matter. He doesn't really like Kennex. He just likes that someone woke him up, which is fine. That makes sense.
Which is fine. But it didn't endear me the way it did in the order that we watched it.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I hear you.
It comes across as a very endearing moment. Mm-hmm. And this way it's just kind of like, well, you were person number 8 and I feel a connection to you.
Yeah.
And then we get into Perception and Skin. The funny thing is when you watch it in order, Skin being number 5 just feels like the arguments are getting softer and softer in a very like gentle progression. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't feel weird at all that all of a sudden they're buddy. It just, because I think well, I mean, it's the music's fault. But I think when we see them in Skin, because they had just met in the pilot, and then we see them in Skin, and they have this, like, married couple argument. Mm-hmm. I forgot that it basically was an argument.
Yeah,
it was. Like, the natural progression of, like, this softer argument makes more sense when it's episode 5. Mm-hmm. And I also thought it was very funny that then you get into Are You Receiving Me with the Olive Oil?
Olive oil.
And then the bends. Although, looking at it in order, again, if, you know, the olive oil happens at, like, episode 6. You remember when we talked about Are You Receiving Me? I think it was, like, episode 3 or something. I can't remember. Mm-hmm. But you had mentioned, like, as we were talking about it, you were like, no, but wait, Dorian has moods. He's grumpy. Yeah. Because Kennex was late. And I'm rewatching it again. I realized Dorian is grumpy because Kennex didn't say thank you.
Oh, either or. I mean, Kennex never says thank you.
Kennex never says thank you.
He's like but like one of the first things he says.
I know, but one of the first things he says is like, you're like, you know what I like about you? Your punctuality. And then he says something like, and you show up late and your car smells like olive oil.
Yeah.
And at first I thought, well, maybe he is upset that he's late. And then I realized, no, he's upset that Kennex's next response wasn't, well, I was late to come to get you because I tried out that olive oil thing and thanks, it worked.
Yeah.
He doesn't acknowledge it at all.
Well, he tries the line. He says he was eating a Greek salad, right?
A Greek salad at 10 a.m.
Amazing.
I mean, why not both? It could be both. Maybe Dorian's upset about both.
Yeah.
And by the time we get to the bends, they're having pranks on each other, which I thought was pretty fun. But yeah, for the most part, the impressions I got were like, the character development is definitely not as jarring when you watch it in order. Mm-hmm. I do think it loses something. I don't know that I would have latched on to Dorian as quickly as I did had Skin not been episode 2. I mean, it would have happened eventually.
It would have happened by episode 3, certainly.
It would have happened by episode 3, sure. Between episode 3 and 4, for sure. Mm-hmm. I do think that the action does not pause.
Yeah.
Because the second episode, Kennex shoots an MX in the face. Mm-hmm. in the first, 3 minutes of it. So, we get it.
That's pretty consistent throughout, though.
The action never stops. There's, I think, one episode where they don't do too much. Like, it's not overly doing too much. Mm-hmm. And I think at that particular episode, I was like, wait, what's happening?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, it was soccer, listeners,
nice.
Which I'm sure you already knew, but it was soccer that Kennex and Stahl watch.
The one scene I went back to watch was to see whether the Ken doll is in fact wearing a helmet. And he is.
Yes. Oh, I did like that Maya is the first, like, civilian human that Dorian gets a real connection to.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have liked to have seen if that did anything further in the show, to be honest. But yeah, outside of that, it was like, oh, look, the characters make sense. It's almost like this was the original intention the whole time.
I know. These poor show writers. I mean, I liked watching the show. So I guess you're right. There was something about the way that it aired that worked. But I can just imagine these writers who took all of this time working on that character development and natural progressions, like seeing it butchered up on screen.
Well, but I can also see how that would have been an issue for its longevity, too, because then you have people and I know you don't always pay attention to, like, the way things are edited, but, like, some of these things were edited so quickly.
Yeah.
That, like, you miss so much just because the show is the way it is. If your characters are being inconsistent, it's like, way to lose your audience.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I felt bad saying that, but it's like, you can't just throw a bunch of spaghetti at the wall and hope some of it sticks.
Yeah, right. The writing of the show was intentional. So when you mess up the order of the episodes, it messes up the show. Surprise!
Surprise! Surprise!
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Well, speaking of where we think the show should have gone, or maybe what we wanted to see.
Yeah.
Look, dear listeners, we were originally going to list a bunch of plot holes, but you've already heard us harp on those.
I mean, I'm basically going to list them now, which is, well, okay.
I mean, fair.
let me say this. As for where the show is going, I do think it is a little strange that in season 1, they didn't actually deal with In Syndicate. Because In Syndicate felt like, the season 1 big bad, as it were.
Yep.
And it didn't bother me that there were little things like Dorian's memories that we didn't really hear about again, or Nigel going over the wall that we didn't really hear about again, because that could have been dealt with in season 2. Like, ooh, these are like the interesting little things you're going to get to see next season. Keep watching. Weird that they didn't deal with In Syndicate at all.
Yeah, and Syndicate definitely felt like this is the thing we're going to be fighting most of this season.
Right? Yeah.
And I don't know that you needed to, I didn't feel a need for all of every single plot and every single episode was disconnected from a whole. And I don't know that you needed to do that. I feel like some of the plot points could have been in direct relation to In Syndicate. Like, you could have easily made the sex bots like, the Albanian consortium could have been, fencing the sex bots for In Syndicate.
Oh, true. So, every time they come across a case, it reveals more about In Syndicate, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Or it doesn't necessarily need to be it doesn't need to be every single episode, but, you could have done something as opposed to the 2 In Syndicate episodes we got.
Yeah. And I mean,
no, one In Syndicate episode. And there was a B side storyline where they talked to someone in Syndicate. That was it.
I was going to say 1.5.
Right? What? Or the heist, the bank robbers could have been trying to get money to pay In Syndicate to do something. You know what I mean? We also didn't get a lot of In Syndicate. They were a terrorist organization. Cool.
Yeah.
That wants what?
Exactly. What else? What are they? So actually, now that you're saying this, it's kind of hard for me. It's hard for me to imagine how everything would tie back to them, but only because I literally don't even know who they are. They're just bad people, I guess.
The terrorist element is so large. It is large, and we don't understand it.
I mean, that season 2, what I wanted in season 2 was to see outside the wall. I just wanted to see it. But that feels like a season 2 thing. Like season 1, deal with In Syndicate, inside the wall. Who is Anna? Maybe Anna's on the other side of the wall, you know? And then season 2, we get to go outside the wall. And then we deal with Vaughn, and then we deal with Anna. That would have been really fun. I think that they could have done some interesting things with Kennick's backstory and his anger issues and his dad. Like maybe he finds out that his dad actually was a little bit of a crooked cop and he had him up on this pedestal for no reason and he's involved in Syndicate too. Or like, oh, I could have gone so many interesting places. That would have been fun.
Yeah. No, I would have been here for, I mean, I'm always here for like, your parents and or a mentor was never who you thought they were. Or they realized that the people they were running with weren't the best people.
Yeah.
You know, something like that. Like, I actually would have liked to have seen more of Kennick's dad. Like, I know I harp on the daddy issues a bit, but I always think that makes for good TV.
Yeah.
I would have watched that. I would have personally have liked to see, I feel like they were setting up a lot of how Dorian perceives the way that the synthetic soul is being used in this world. Like we get to see Dorian encounter a DRN who is working in a hospital and like basically no longer a cop and who even necessarily knows how much of that is programming and how much of that is just this DRN just likes what he does and this is what he does.
Yeah.
And then, especially with the sex bots, it's a synthetic soul that has been kneecapped substantially. And it's, you know, him needing to come to terms with the fact that this thing is like him. And all these other pieces, you know, may or may not fall into place of like, the synthetic soul in this world was taken and turned into different things.
Yeah.
And how does he deal with that? Including
a possible army of evil DRNs on the outside of the wall.
A bunch of evil Michael Ealy's.
Evil Michael Ealy's. What if he
just chomping at the bit?
What if he gathers all of the good, quote, good synthetic souls around him to combat the synthetic souls that are outside the wall?
I mean, this is very iRobot.
An army of sex bots.
An army of sex bots.
Give it to me.
100%. 100%. I would watch that. See, I would watch that episode.
I would watch that episode. Yeah. Totally. They find a way to unkneecap them, basically.
Yes.
They can bring in Rudy for that.
He would need to.
That is something that Rudy would be able to help you with. Rudy could figure out how to unkneecap the sex bots.
One of my extremely unlikely theories was that Rudy was actually secretly a bad guy. Like, what if he is secretly the leader of In Syndicate? I don't actually think this is true, but it was just fun to think about for like a hot second.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, totally. He could have something nefarious up his sleeve.
Yes. And I also appreciate that under Kennick's finds out who his dad is, did something terrible, and Kennick's anger issues, and then the musical episode are the notes that Danielle has. And I'm like, please tell me we get like an angry rock song from Carl Urban.
Okay, but I did literally zero research into the musical ability of the actors in this show. Literally zero research. We do know that Dorian can sing a little bit of Lionel Richie.
Well, he can carry a tune. Yeah, he can sing some Lionel Richie. I actually looked it up because I was trying to figure out, like, can Michael Ealy sing? Was literally the thing I Googled. And what came up was, did you know that Michael Ealy was in a Beyonce video? And yes, he's in Halo. The funny thing about that, quick sidebar, is that he was actually offered to be in a Beyonce video first.
But not as a singer, as a
what's
dancer?
That song? What's that song? No, as the acting, love interest. Like a music video,
so
like a character.
It doesn't tell us about his musical ability because he wasn't a backup singer.
Exactly.
In anything. Okay.
Which I was just like, that's not what I Googled. Google.
Okay, but
what
do
are
you
doing?
think that Kennick's could sing a rock song? Could
Carl Urban? Carl Urban might.
He's got that vibe.
I want Carl Urban to be a singer, but I also don't know if my brain is almost like blending him together with Hugh Jackman.
Oh. I guess.
An Australian and a New Zealand and a two action sci-fi star people. Like, I don't know if my brain is like, yeah, that makes sense. And I'm just like, oh, please don't. They're two different people. They're completely different people. But would I like Carl Urban to sing? Yes. I just don't know if he can or not.
Yeah.
I would love Lily Taylor to have a song about
would her
being
song
captain
be
of a
about?
police force.
Being captain of police force.
Valerie Stahl. Can Valerie Stahl have a song about like a little bit of a a Grease,
I mean, honestly,
like
as
hopelessly devoted to you?
I was going to say, as long as they don't give her the song that's either a duet with Kennex or the song where she's pining over him, then fine, she can have a song. But if they give her a song and it is only about love, then I'm going to be upset.
Then Danielle is out. She out.
The other thing I would have really loved to see in season 2, and I don't fault the show for not having more of it in season 1, because there's so many characters, and it makes sense that you're going to want to flesh out Kennex and Dorian first, right? Though granted, I don't think they flesh out Dorian at all.
I know.
I think
Well, Dorian
season
is just
2
made into this, like, just be super sympathetic and
Yeah.
people will love you. And it's
Yeah.
like, yes, we do love him. However,
However, if in season 2 they let us just, like, I want to know, well, I know you're obsessed with the Luger test.
I am.
So in telling us
But-
more about the Luger test, they could tell us a little bit more about Dorian, why Dorian was decommissioned specifically, especially since in the pilot they dropped that a bunch of his record is redacted. So it doesn't sound to me like he just failed the Luger test one time and then was decommissioned. It sounds like he did something or was involved in something. And I want to know
right?
what it was.
I know.
That would be great fodder for season 2.
I would love to know. I would love to know about, like you said, the memory pack and the redacted record and all those pieces. I would love to know more about Maldonado
Yeah.
and who she is to Kennex. Was/is. Danielle and I were talking about this because I had to sort of come to grips with my own, like, heteronormativity of just like, if this character was being played by a dude, would it hit the same way
Yeah.
that this does? And the answer is no. More or less because, like, there's an inherent sexism in the show, and there's also, like, we can't not look at this as, like, a female captain on the police force, and, like, she's keeping the people around her who she trusts and who she understands. But, like, I want to know.
Yeah.
I want to know so many things.
If she were played by a dude, the way that the show is written, that the dude would have been cast as basically Carl Urban's mentor, right?
Yeah.
But they don't.
Yeah.
No.
But they don't feel that way.
They don't feel that way.
But I'm also sitting here trying to, like, on Blood Brothers would have had a completely different feel.
Yeah.
Right? And we also get the Not a Cop bar.
Not a cop bar.
The Not a Cop bar, where it's just like, would that scene have hit the way it hit? And, like, there is like one whole moment in it where I think Maldonado says something like, I lost a bet. When Valerie Stahl is like, you got stuck with Kennex, and she's like, yeah, I lost a bet.
Maldonado watching her entire precinct over those cameras, a little weird. Maldonado, just a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes there.
Oh, that was the other thing about watching it in order.
Yeah.
You know, the thing that Kennex was, like, continuing to go to the Recollectionist and, like, you know, having some real bad flashes and blackouts. That made sense. Because we got that instant payoff. I think it was something like 4 episodes in of, like, what was happening with him.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's Valerie. We've already talked about Valerie, but they teased her backstory so much.
I know. And I want it. And I'm not going to get it.
That would have been really fun to see. Her to just take on a bigger role in the show. Or just more McGinnis. I'll take either. It doesn't bother me.
Well, this is the interesting thing, right? Because this show goes so hard so fast.
Yeah.
I don't think it leaves a lot of room for characters like this to do the thing. There's only so much time they can spend on developing characters. And I don't know that it would take away from the show if they took their foot off that gas pedal. I don't know. Like, it would be a very different show.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
maybe that's okay. Mm-hmm. Those were, in a nutshell, in an under 1 hour nutshell, our hopes and dreams.
Yep.
For what could have happened. Oh, man. I yearn for that musical episode like you would not believe.
Oh, me too. That would have been so good. Oof, what would their chorus song have been like?
What would the opener have sounded like?
What would Rudy sing about? Would Rudy sing?
Would Rudy sing? I feel like Rudy would either be like an I Want song, very soulful and slow, or it would be like a stomp. like a bunch of sounds of electronics as he fixed a robot, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For sure.
So, Joy, before we sign off, is this when you/I/we make the very special announcement?
Yes. So we have a very special announcement. The wrap-up episode. We are going to be continuing this podcast. Our season 2, we have chosen to watch Fringe.
Which, oddly, is a show I have seen. So we might have to change my little opener tagline. Otherwise, it's going to be really awkward every time. When I say I've seen nothing, almost nothing, but I have in fact seen this, and I've seen it many times, and I love it.
I mean, you've still seen almost nothing. We just so happen to be talking about one of the not nothings that you've
almost
seen.
Nothing pre-2016 is what I'll say.
That's a mouthful.
Exactly.
We'll see. We'll workshop it. We'll figure it out. I'm confident in us. But yes, we also may be getting a guest star for our new season, which maybe we'll just drop when we drop the first episode. I don't know. Should we tell them? No.
We haven't made
We'll
any
keep it
hard
as a
decisions.
surprise.
Surprise!
You have to listen to season 2 to find out who our guest star is. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Between now and then, we would love to hear from you. You can check us out at Binge O'Clock Pod on Twitter and Facebook, where you can answer the question, what was your favorite episode of Almost Human and why? You can also email us at bingeoclockpod@gmail.com.
Yes, and tell your friends, tell your family, tell your loved ones, tell the sci-fi fans in your life about Binge O'Clock, and we will see you next time.